All right, good afternoon. This is Andy McNeill with Free Arkansas Podcast, and I'm here with Mike Jones, who's a candidate for the Arkansas House, District 52. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Well, I'm really glad that you're here. Before I start in, why don't you take an opportunity and just tell us a little bit about yourself? Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in a small town called Holland over in Faulkner County. Went to school at Greenbrier till the 9th grade. Then my family moved to Southeast Arkansas, finished up school there, raised on a family farm, cattle and a row crop operation. And then I attended college at Southern Arkansas University with an agriculture business degree. Grew up around a lot of the conservative things that I stand for: rural people, hardworking, blue collar type guys.
Yeah,
family that work different jobs in the blue collar industry.
And you're still doing farming today, a little bit, right?
We are. We're running a cow calf operation and some row crop. We also have a few trucks that we're running, just trying to keep everything on an even keel.
Well, and I imagine this year it's much better to be in the cattle business than it is in row crop farming.
The cattle business has been great this year, although everybody wants to talk about that. But you get into the situation where you've had 4 or 5 years of really tough cow prices, calf prices, markets that's fluctuated. Then you move into what we call probably the best times we've ever seen with pricing. Wholesale commodities are great, except not on the row crop side, or corn, soybeans, rice. Those commodities are really, really rough right now.
Yeah, I think that I've got family that are rice farmers down in Stuttgart, and I've talked to a handful of all sorts of farmers, and a lot of them have had their best yields in the last couple of years, but still are going to lose money on and even with the big beautiful bill, the changes they made to the subsidies in terms of the floors. If you go back and look at where the floors were before, and you just run just the CPI on them, they're still probably not where they need to be. And they're only really 5%. I know it's even tough for some farmers. And I think this is true for the entire district, but if we just take Yell County's GDP is about $820 million, and a good chunk of that's ag. That's really important to the county. Now, I'm taking all types of ag, but anyway.
Well, I think you see our area is really dominated by agriculture, whether it be poultry, cattle, or row crop operations, with the chicken plants that we have, the feed mills, and the row crop operators.
Well, so this is the second time you've run, and I know you got really close last time to running against an incumbent. Why did you run last time, and why are you running this time?
Well, I guess when I ran before, I was triggered by, I never really been involved in politics. I've always voted, registered when I was 18. I thought it was real important. My grandfather always said there's people died so you could vote. And as that grew, my parents I'd be like, why can't we go to the Capitol and talk about such and such, or talk about this bill or that bill? And my dad was always like, son, we're here farming, we're here raising food for America, and that's our job. So what I came to realize is that there were people controlling things and setting bills and setting things that we didn't have any control over, and they knew nothing about how to raise food or what happened in the process of raising food. And I was just kind of put out with it. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go run. This was in 22. Mary Bentley had just been moved out of our district, and we had Marcus Richmond coming in, which nobody in Yell County really knew that much about him. And it was like, if I'm going to run, it's my time. And so we got in the race. I don't know. It was probably 60 days before the primary vote, maybe 80. And I put 30,000 miles on a pickup truck trying to see everybody in 3 counties.
Oh, you did? Yeah, I can imagine. What did you learn by doing it?
I learned that politics is a different animal than anybody would ever think it would be.
Okay. Like in what way? What does that mean?
So you think everybody goes and votes. I think our voting, I'm not sure the amount of citizens we have registered to vote. It's like 7,600 in Yell County, I think, something like that. I could be wrong about that. We only had like 3,000 or 4,000 votes.
Right.
So you go out to these places and you talk to these people. Well, I learned the first thing you ask them, are you registered to vote? Do you vote? And if they're not, you can't spend time with them because there's way too many you got to talk to in a short amount of time.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate, that such a few number of people actually, use their right. I always do. I always vote. Is that mainly around people not wanting to vote, not necessarily exercising their voting right?
Well, honestly, I thought that I could take my phone and my pickup and I could go see people. I knew enough people that I could get elected.
Yep.
Well, those same people you think votes or will vote for you don't even vote.
Right.
So that was something I learned. And I learned that there's people out there that will say, the people will come to and say, I really don't know who's in this race or what they stand for. Can you explain it to me? Or who do you think we need to vote for? And you have to go get those people. You have to go talk to those people and win them over for your campaign. And so that's one thing I did learn.
Yeah.
And it is not just go door to door and ask everybody for their vote, because a lot of them don't vote.
Right. Well, one of the things that I notice about the races locally, especially the ones that aren't really big, that door to door and those relationships and the communication and getting them on board is super important. Versus a larger, like running for Congress, where you really can't do that, right? Really the game there is raise as much money as you can and do advertising. And I'm sure you're going to do a little bit of that, but I can only imagine that but you still have to work really, really hard on the beating the streets, I imagine, to win the district. Would that be a fair way would you agree with that?
Well, I really also, you say that about raising money, that was not even on my radar. I didn't realize it cost as much to run with signs and advertising and cards. And so we have the most pile auctions in 2 counties, I think, around here, because every fire department, every function has some kind of pile auction or some kind of donation point. But the good thing about the money that we raise all goes back into the district. Any money that I raise or is donated to me is put back in the district, a way of donations, advertising for the premium for the fairs. We try and put all that money back in the district.
And I think you told me this before, but tell me your philosophy around fundraising. Is there anything like, money, you don't want money from, certain groups or anything like that?
Well, you get caught up in a trap. Back when I ran before, I was at the Dutch Creek Fire Department, and I hadn't taken any PAC money. I honestly, I was so green, I really didn't know what PAC money was at that time. And so I knew that the other candidates had taken PAC money, and I was like, look, I'm going to vote for the constituents and myself. I don't have these PACs giving me money, telling me how to vote or what to do. Well, and so that wasn't really a misstatement. The PAC money, you want some of the PAC money because you taxed it to run your campaign, but they just want your ear if there's something comes up that affects them. And so they had never, anybody that talked to me with PAC money had never said, hey, we want you to do this or that. They said, please just let us have your ear if it's involved our product or business or whatever. Yeah. So funding to a campaign is I'm going to say 60 or 70% important, because you have to be able to travel. You have to be able to put that advertising out there. You have to put the billboards out. I mean, it's a lot.
That's right. Well, look, there was probably, give or take, 1,000 bills that went through the legislation last session, and it's impossible for you to be an expert in all of that, right? There's no way. And I know that if I were down there talking about the things that our company does, trying to talk to people about it, and I've done this many times, trying to communicate complex ideas really, really quick, because they don't have enough time. So you just can't be an expert on everything. Before we dive into the politics of it, just to give a little bit more background on yourself. And so I'll throw out a few things, but please feel free to, go a couple different directions. But so what would you say is like your biggest accomplishment?
Well, as a father, raising 3 great kids, they're mine, and I'm going to brag on them.
Oh, do it.
I have one that works on the ranch and is a certified welder. My middle son is, this is his first year in the Air Force Academy, Colorado Springs.
Oh, really? That's impressive.
Yes. That's been his dream since he was in the 7th grade, and he worked really hard and made it come true. The other one is 12. My youngest daughter's 12 years old. She attends Dardanelle Middle School. She loves horses. She's on a cheerleader. She's a great person with other kids. She's an advocate for kids in her school. If somebody's bullying somebody or they don't have certain things, she befriends them and takes them under her wing, kind of. And I'm very proud of that.
Well, and I guess she's now gets sort of be like an only child since she's so young and everybody else is gone. In some ways.
She is kind of only child. She kind of rules the roost, So we kind of do whatever she wants, and when the rest of them come around, they kind of cater to her. So it's just pretty.
Well, daughters
pretty
are sweet.
That she rules the roost.
I've got a couple daughters, and I even throw the daughter in. Well, in this case, I only have one daughter-in-law, but I throw her in the same boat. One of the things I think about the situation down in Little Rock is, really it's basically all Republicans. Yeah, there are some Democrats down there, but the Democrats are not enough in number to really sway anything or stop anything in a committee. And, so really one of the things I think is that, it's really up to Republicans to figure out what the right things are, and they don't agree on everything. Tell me a time or how you approach things when you're going to go against the grain. You don't follow the pack, so to speak.
Well, I'm going to bring a perfect example up, and I know we kind of talked about it off the air, is that we have a prison system that the governor's wanting to put in Charleston, Franklin County. And, there is so much upheaval about that and the way it's done that the people are really upset. And I'm all for prisons and prison beds, because I know our sheriffs and prosecutors tell me we're overcrowded. We're just to the point of busting our seams. But the way that prison was brought in, the way things are brought up, the way things have been done, people are very upset. And we have a whole different animal up there with Senator Stubblefield passing away and those people not having representation. I'm with the people that they don't want it in their territory, and I wouldn't want it either. Now, as far as a prison and somewhere else where somebody wanted it, that made better sense, more electrical power, more water, all the things they needed, I would vote for that. But as far as the prison going in Franklin County, I think it's not a great idea. That's one situation where I'm against the grain.
Well, it's definitely a dilemma, right? Because if you look at just our incarceration rates, Arkansas, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I've talked to people about this. We're one of the higher incarceration rates in the United States, which would translate to one of the highest incarcerations in the world. And so it begs the question of, like, are Kansans just generally more criminally oriented? And I don't think they are. Then we have a high recidivism a number that's pretty high. And, it's expensive to house prisoners, right? It's not cheap. That prison that they that they were putting forward, I think when you broke it down by prisoners, $200,000 per, prison per bed to build it out. So it's super expensive. I mean, we could build them their own house somewhere, for that. And so I don't have the answers for it, and I applaud them trying to work on it for sure. But I understand, like what you said, there's probably maybe better formulas that would get more people on board. It's so.
Well, I think you have to have more transparency to start with. If there was transparency to start with, we probably wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah, that's probably true too.
The people of Franklin County and Charleston area, I had people. I'm not even in that district, and I've had people calling me, knowing that I'm campaigning and I'm running for office. Hey, where do you stand on this? We'll support you if. So I believe that the people really are upset about it, and I think the way it's done with very little transparency is caused problems. Yeah. I think there's tons of other places we could have a prison. I know Scott County. I talked to the Scott County judge. He's got 3,000 acres right off 71, plenty of water, plenty of electricity. He would love to have the prison in his district.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, we'll see what they get done. The next session. On the opposite of that, give me an example or tell me how you work with other people that you disagree with, to find solutions.
Well, we're so divided, Andy, today. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, or what you are. So I'll give you a perfect example. I was door-to-door campaigning yesterday, and I ran across a gentleman that knows me, has known me a long time. He's a retired farmer. Of course, that's my background. I walked up, knocked on his door. I didn't really realize it was his home. I opened the door. We spoke, and I gave him my handbill, and he said, "Well, I'm not voting Republican." I'm like, "Okay, why not? What's your, what?" Well, I just think everything with the government shutdown and the what's going on. The Democrats don't like Republicans. Republicans don't like Democrats, and all. I said, "Wait." I said, "You know me. You know how I was raised. You know what I stand for, and we have to work together as a group of people to come up with solutions to fix the problems." And I said, you're saying you're not going to vote for Republican. Well, what about my character? You know my character. So throw out Republican, Democrat. I need your vote, because there's not going to be a Republican or not going to be a Democrat running this race. So you've got to pick one of us. And you know me, and you know how. He said, "Well," before it was all over with, he said, "Well, I think I can vote for you now."
There you
And
go.
so that's a situation where you have to explain, "Hey, I'm going to do what's best for constituents in a District 52, not what's, party lines or whatever it may be, but what's best for our constituents."
Yeah. And sometimes that's not always easy, right? Because with 1,000 bills, it's a challenge. What stuff, I'm curious, what gets you mad? What gets you social media, the news?
Wasteful government spending.
Yeah. They get you yeah. Yeah.
I can give you a couple examples. There's one right here in Darnell.
God.
We have a school, our Darnell school, for my daughter attends. We worked really hard to get FFA started back there, and I'm very proud of that. I was one of the ones that went to the school board and talked to people and got things going, and we got it back in our schools because I wanted my daughter to be able to experience that, because I think it's a very good program. So we built a barn. I know it's called a show barn, work barn, whatever it is. I was astounded when I found out what that barn cost. I'm going to say it's 60 by 50 building, concrete block, metal roof. That building cost $774,000. I could have built it for less than $100,000.
Yeah.
My question was, why did we spend $774,000 on this building there's not even a classroom in? Tyson or somebody donated all the working facilities for cow working operation, and it's got to be put in the barn. But I'm just astounded at, and then I was told that the contract, the technical plans, the drawings, the drawings alone cost $74,000. I mean, we have to do something about that. We need to spend that other $500,000 on educating our kids, not building buildings.
Right.
And there's got to be a happy medium in there somewhere that we can fix.
Yeah, it is always interesting, so often around Arkansas, and I'm not declaring one thing's bad or not, but oftentimes some of the nicest buildings are the schools in the county. I mean, huge facilities, and you do have to question, like, how does this in service of educating our kids, at times, spending that capital, what I'm talking about. Speaking of that, one of the things that I think, and maybe I'd be curious about what you think about this. So I sort of view things from this lens, and this is why I actually do this podcast, is how do we create more prosperity? How do we create better quality of life, standard of living? And I view it through the lens of an arms race for jobs. So we want to attract jobs and economic activity, because I believe that rises, a lot of the boats. But a lot of people go down to the state house and they have like one thing that's the thing they're going to like grind the axe on. Do you have a personal agenda where you go down there and you're like, this is something I feel like I've got to work on, and this is what I'm all about, for good or for bad?
Well, when I started this, it was about what I could do for agriculture. But as I visited with constituents and saw and really realized what was going on at the Capitol and with our districts and with different parts of the state, there's way more to it than that. So I'm like you. I think economic development is number one that we need to have here in this district. Scott, Yale County, we have lots of ground and we have lots of employees that would be willing to go to work if we had the right businesses, operating companies come in. But economic development and taxes, that's what generates new roads, new buildings, new schools, new all that stuff.
That's
So
right.
economic development is probably number one that we have to really look at for this district. That's what we need. If I can get involved down there in Little Rock and say, hey, we need factories, we need this. If we do that, then we'll bring jobs to this town. Now, the other things I'm looking at is our senior citizen centers are not fully funded. Now, Scott County had lost $283,000 of their funding, Scott and Southern Sebastian, from a federal government grant that they did not get this time. I know Danville and Dardanelle are closed on Mondays, and that's, we're all getting older. So senior citizens
Right.
are really something that's sitting with me that we need to work toward providing everything they need. So I think that's an opportunity for us. I think that we've got to rural fire departments. We're really struggling with rural fire departments and the volunteers. We're not doing really anything for those guys right now. For your insurance rates to be lower, we need rural firefighters. And I want to look at some kind of stipend maybe or a tax break for those guys because they're doing it out of their own pickups. A lot of them are paying for their own turnout gear. So there's several issues that I don't have one main agenda. I'm not going down there to work on one civil issue or one thing. I think that there's a lot of work to be done.
So I want to go through a handful of things, that are bills, get your sort of view on it, or even just like topics. Arkansas's budget is about $6.5 billion. So to put that in perspective, Walmart's annual revenue is $600 billion, so like 100 times bigger. And we really spend money predominantly on we spend more than three things, but three things really dominate it. One is education. So we spend over half of that is in education and primary and secondary and higher education. The next probably is healthcare, mainly in the form of Medicaid is another big number. And then prisons. And then everything else is sort of, more rounding error-ish, so, and then, and I also want to describe the sort of the constituency, but maybe I'll let you take a stab at that. How do you view like your average person, if we were talking about statistics anyway, in the district, or how would you describe the district if you were describing it from like, crime or healthcare or whatever you think's relevant?
Well, I think we do have an aging population because we see so many of our younger people have moved out of the district to go have better jobs, and that's why we need economic development. We have the aging population. We have populations that are in here, immigrant populations, because they're working in our factory jobs, our Tysons, our Wayne Farms, feed mills, chicken plants, so forth. We have, I'm going to say we have a diverse population, and even in both Scott County and Southern, but I'm going to say predominantly senior citizens. And one of the reasons I say that is because we looked at the voting records, and the median age of the voter in this district is 67 years old.
I didn't know that. Just for this one thing, I looked up Yell County, but you've got 1 in 4 people are on Medicaid. And so people I work with, they send their kids to Dardanelle schools. And I think, and they're on the PTA, and what they tell me is there's like, it's a big number, 60%, 70% that are on lunch assistant programs. If you throw in the people on Medicare, you get to a very significant number. It's not over half, but it's a big number that are basically, from a healthcare perspective, relying on government programs. So like we said earlier, it's got a heavy ag bend as well. The LEARNS Act was meant to do a number of different things in primary education. And I'm curious what you think about it, and I can give you some of the facts about it if you need me to. Do you have a perspective on, the good and the bad, or what you think about that bill?
Well, Sarah Sanders put forth that, and a lot of people supported it. I think there's good and bad, both. I get both from superintendents, teachers, parents. There's a lot of dissent where in my district that we have teachers that they paid $50,000 and teachers that have been there that it didn't didn't get that raise.
Right.
And what a lot of people think is everybody got $50,000 raise. Well, so those that were special education teachers that didn't meet the matrix of the money are still making what they were making. I don't know if they're making it in all our districts, but there's some districts in Arkansas that's happening. So, and I had that explained to me by a superintendent one time. I think that's one good thing that we brought. We're having to compete for our teachers, the good teachers, to teach from other states to keep them here in Arkansas. And I think that's one good thing about it. The one thing that I do hear from superintendents and then at school board members too is, okay, this voucher system. And that's a thing that a lot of people like because they can take their kids, go to a private school, whatever it may be. But what I hear from superintendents is that those vouchers, while they're in, some are good, they go to these schools that don't have to meet the same requirements as they do in our public schools. And so then you have another situation where I had a school board teacher say, well, I got all these homeschool kids that come to our play football and use our FFA, and we don't get any of the money. Well, that's not true. I found that out today. So in one school in the district, their time's set up in 8. They have 8 school periods. If that student comes for any of those school periods, they get that 1 8, 2 8, 3 8, how many ever classes they attend for that day, the school does get that money. So they're not using that for free all the time. And that's what I'd gotten.
Got it.
But I think we hadn't done right for 40 years. Look at our grade system. I mean, we had dropouts in the 8th and 9th grade. So something has to change and it has to come along to help. And I think this is a right step. We just got to refine the process. And there's some worry about funding for the LEARNS Act also.
Yeah, I think that I would agree that, I don't have this in front of me either, but relative to other states, we don't perform. We're not at the top. We're near we're on the second half or the bottom quartile. And I do think that if we want to grab jobs, we have to educate our children. And that doesn't mean they've got to go and be, a lawyer. They can there's so many types of jobs they can go do. Because we could also talk about the Access Act as well, and that broadens some ability to get some funds for trade schools, et cetera. How do you feel about some of the changes that have been going on around Medicaid, in particular, moving people off Medicaid? Now, this happened at a federal level, so it's not something that you guys would get to vote on. But I'm just curious how you feel about it, because if you're sick, whether you're on Medicaid or not, let's say you got kicked off, you're still going to get sick, and you're going to show up at a rural hospital that then has to treat you and then not get any reimbursement. So it's a very tough situation. You got an opinion on that?
Well, I think healthcare is very important to our district in a whole. If we got to have healthy people so we can have jobs and have people contributing to society, I agree. And it may be a raw point with some people. If you're an able-bodied person, you need to be working. We're not out here trying to support you, and you're sitting at home drawing some kind of government subsidy, some kind of government check. If you're able-bodied, you need to go to work. And I'm glad we made stipulations that we do have to, for them to get some of the subsidies and some of the things that they do have to work.
When you hear the numbers of the people in, let's say, Yell County on Medicaid, 1 in 4, and a lot of that's children, do you feel like there's people out there that are in Yell County that are sort of like, abusing the system by not working? I just don't know.
Well, I think any system where you give away money, you're going to have abuse.
That's probably true. Yes.
I mean, if we're going to be honest about it, that's just what it is.
No, that's true. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things on the vouchers, right? I mean, because one of the complaints is like, hey, I set up a sham school where I don't have to do anything,
Mm-hmm.
and I collect the check and keep my kid out of school.
That's one of the things that I question when LEARNS Act come out. How are we going to police that? Well, I had another superintendent. Today has been the phone calls from superintendents and teachers and people in the district. That's all I've done all morning is listen to what's going on in the district. Well, I have these parents that come in that don't get their kids to school on time. And now we've turned them over to police after 10 days and they come in wanting a voucher to take care of their kids at school. We know those kids are not going to get educated but those parents are going to keep them out of school and take the money, and there's no criteria for them to meet.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
policed.
I'm curious when it gets to stuff where we have lots of people that should agree but don't. I'm curious how you approach them. I'm just going to give you a couple examples, so, and I'll just try to make it funny if I can. But like I have friends that will, if a doctor says it, they may not believe it. But if they read it on some backwater internet page, they're gonna believe it. And this shows up in like, hey, I'm gonna take these vitamins, or I'm gonna take whatever little concoction I think is for me, and but I think down at the State Department, you're gonna run into stuff like vaccines, right? And so, and I'm just curious, are you the type that you're gonna is knowledge a thing? And if somebody who's done something forever, are you going to listen to them, or no? You could read the backwater internet set and know better. I'm just curious how you sort of think about those issues.
Well, I think there's so much distrust in our government with these COVID vaccines that people are really nervous about it. I believe my kids are all vaccinated.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't take the COVID shot. My kids didn't take. I mean, I think that's a choice that should be up to you as a parent. That's whether you vaccinate your kids. There's this, hey, we're getting these mumps and measles out of Mexico. Well, if your kids are vaccinated for them, you don't get them.
That's right.
And we may be bringing them and infesting them here or open them up to that. Well, if your kids were vaccinated, they wouldn't have them. Yeah. Now, that's, I'm for less government. Don't tell me what to do. I'm the guy, if you tell me to do this, I may go the other way and do something else. That may not be the best thing for me, but I think sometimes that's good because we stand up for what we believe in.
Yeah. Now, let me riff on that for a second, because I want to tell you that in this case, I'm in agreement. I don't like being told what to do. I like having the freedom to make a choice. So I don't feel like I'm hypocritical when I look at the First Amendment or the Second Amendment. And I also am like really big on the Fourth Amendment, which is, illegal search and seizure, because I think the government's grabbing all your personal data, and so I think that that's the next thing that's a really big deal is privacy. But and so I'll ask about privacy, but I want to start with the 10 Commandments because they voted on it this year. And if you were down there, you would have had to vote on it one way or the other. Very difficult to vote against the 10 Commandments, right? Do you have a particular view on that?
Well, I'm going to put it to you this way. I was raised in a Baptist church, and I know what the 10 Commandments are.
Yeah.
But when you place them in a state-funded facility, you open yourself up to, as bad as I don't want to say it, Satan worshipers, other religions that yes. They can do the same thing, and that's been the talk down there at the Little Rock is we're opening ourselves up to some other things. Do I want my kid to see 10 Commandments every day? Yeah. You're damn right I do.
Yeah.
So, but we have to be really careful with that when we're putting that installing that as we leave ourselves open for lawsuits and other things.
Well, or, like if you started changing it, like, hey, would you like to force everybody to read the Book of Mormon? Right. And you may be saying like, yeah, no, I'm not right.
It's the same principle. I mean, it's just, if you want to get down to it, it's the same principle. Hey, you got the 10 Commandments. We want our Book of Mormon. We want our Book of Satan, or whatever it may be.
Whatever it is, right? It's a slippery slope.
That's what I'm throwing out there. I'm saying you open yourself up to that, and you have to either deal with it through legislative process, lawsuits, or whatever it may be. But that's a bridge that has to be crossed when it comes.
That's right. Well, I'm a little bit cynical in this regard because I actually think the reason that they're putting these things in is so that a judge declares them unconstitutional to move them up to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court would, if it tilts more right, maybe they say, oh my gosh, we should do it. I just think regardless of what the Supreme Court would say, I just think it's a slippery slope because I could envision for me, you suggesting that my children have to do something that I don't want them to do. Because it's the same way with the vaccine, right? If they say, for the greater good, you should do this. And maybe there's a place where that's true, but like there's a lot of places it's not, in my personal opinion. Do you have a view on privacy? Do you think that's, something that is an issue for all of us? Every time you go through the airport now, your picture gets taken, do you have a view on that?
I think you can't walk down the street without your picture being taken by the government or by somebody's iPhone or ring phone cameras. I don't know how many houses that I door knock, They had Ring cameras. So yeah, privacy is going to be a big thing. Can you have privacy in your own home?
Uh,
If you're careful, it's a possibility you don't.
Well, I'm sort of convinced that, like, the other day I think I was looking for like a mattress or something, and then sure enough, on social media it starts giving me mattresses, and I think like, okay, like I did not type this in. How does it, like it had to like pick up a word that I was looking at or something, and so, um, what are some of the issues that you think are really important down there? I know we've talked about business development. Are there certain things that you'd like to mention here that I didn't bring up, or you think that are, that you're hearing out on the campaign trail that like I hear a lot about X or Y?
Housing.
Yeah.
Housing is a big issue. My son just got pre-approved for his first loan. There's houses. He has two kids and one on the way, and he's married. So there's $100,000 to $120,000 homes, 2-bedroom, 1-bath type deals, and then you have what would fit his family is $500,000. There's no in between, and there's not very many on the bottom end.
Right.
Places to rent. I mean, rent in Dardanelle will blow your mind. $750 to $1,700 a month.
Yeah.
And that's like I tried to explain to my son. I said, if you're renting, you can buy a house for that kind of money. And when you get these younger generations, if you don't explain to them and show them and teach them, they just keep putting good money after bad on these rental deals. And I know there's people that have rentals and just like tell me to be quiet, but that's the way it works. But we've got to get our families stable in a situation where they can live and work and enjoy their life, so they stay in our communities with good jobs and so forth.
Yeah.
But again, I think housing has been a number one issue. Healthcare, there's some healthcare questions that have came up. The prison thing, even though it's not in our district, has came up several times.
Yeah.
And the transparency of the governor.
Yeah. Interesting. I think that, just sort of playing off what you said, one of the things I worry about young folks, in terms of how to get a start, so many of them have gone off to college, and let's say, like it wasn't their thing, or even if it was their thing, took on a ton of debt and, aren't able to get a job that what it does is just delays your ability to buy a home, because now you're saddled with debt throughout your 20s. You're trying to pay off as hard as you can, presumably, and, it just makes it harder. So as those percentage of ownership drops, that has implications, over time, for sure.
Well, when you come out, one other thing before we leave this subject. So another thing, I know we have a vocational school in Russellville. The one big thing has came up. We don't have enough plumbers or electricians, and we need technical schools. I know we bus our kids across the river every day to go to that VOTEC school, but between the three counties, Scott, Yale, and Southern Sebastian, let's face it, there's a lot of blue collar people there. And
of course.
If we had a school here that taught a trade, we would also have economic development. So, well, that factory's coming. Well, I know they make electricians and plumbers and welders there. There's going to be some employees there.
That's right.
And so I think vocational education is very important. One of the things that I was glad to see the legislature do 2 years ago, and I ran on my campaign the first time, was like, okay, we're getting all this money out of the lottery, and you have to go to a degree school, whether it be Fayetteville or Arkansas Tech or UCA or ASU, whatever, to use those funds. Well, the legislator has now made it where those kids can go to a VOTechnical school and use that money also.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. I think that you're right about that. And, look, there's plenty of very, very good jobs that involve a lot of trades. I mean, I would tell someone when they would come talk to me and ask advice, and they'd say, should I go to college? And let's say I knew that the kid from like was a friend of one of my children. If I thought they were going to go and flounder and they were going to major in like management, let's say, and there's nothing wrong with that major, and walk out with $45,000 of debt or something like that. I was like, look, you know what you should do? Go get a truck driving job. You can do really well. You still can take classes at night, figure out what you really want to do. And at least you're not down all that capital. right? You can
Yeah.
at least make some money while you're doing it, and probably, pick up, like be a little bit more responsible, quite frankly, So, um, Mike, let me switch to the last thing here. Um, so when you're when you're sitting in front of a group or when you're knocking on someone's door, give us your 30, 60-second elevator pitch. How do you do it?
Well, it kind of depends on the process of the place you're at. If you're in a farming community, you do a little different than you're in town. But I guess my door knock is they come out, I introduce myself. My name's Mike Jones. I'm running for state rep at District 52. I'm a farmer rancher. I'm not a lawyer or politician. That's my spiel. And there's things that I want to work on to make rural Arkansas and rural District 52 a lot better than it is now, whether it be economic development, for our funding our senior citizen centers, funding of our rural fire departments. And it just kind of goes into a discussion from there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a noble pursuit, right? I mean, you'd like to think that if you go down there and you spend some time, it's better than when you left. I mean, you leave it better than when you started, right? The district, that is, it's so I think that's.
I think it is. Well, for like me, I know there's guys that go down there and that they're in it to try and make a living. For me and myself, is what I tell everybody. It's like, look, I've already got my living made. I don't really have to do this. I want to go make a difference on my own and work with other guys and make things better for my kids and my grandkids.
Yeah. I notice, and this is probably unfair for some of them, but I noticed that some people that, like you said, this is kind of their career, they tend to be the ones that, are a little bit more flamboyant, like a little bit more, like very active on social media, and they're, sort of about raising their profile versus, real impactful things for the district. That's probably not completely fair when I'm saying that, but it just looks that way for me from an outsider. So, Mike, thank you very much for taking the time, and thanks for running. I'm sure you don't have to do this, right? You could be doing other things, and it's a lot of yeoman's work. And so, just thank you for taking the time, and good luck on the process.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for having me.